On the morning of April the 9th, 1996, an 18-year-old factory worker in Hugjiltu, the capital of China's Inner Mongolia region, walked into a public restroom near his textile mill. What he found inside would end his life. A woman had been raped and murdered. Her body was still there. The young man's name was Hugjiltu. He did what almost anyone would do. He ran for help. He reported what he had seen to the police. 61 days later, China executed him for the murder he had reported. This is one of the most disturbing miscarriages of justice in modern Chinese history. It is the story of a teenager who did everything right, and a justice system that needed someone to blame quickly, more than it needed to find the truth. Stay with me, because what happened next, 9 years later, and then 18 years later, will show you exactly how far a government will go to avoid admitting it killed an innocent person. If this case is new to you, there are more like it on this channel. Subscribe and let's continue. Let's start at the beginning. In the spring of 1996, China was in the middle of what authorities called a strike hard campaign, a nationwide crackdown on violent crime. The government wanted fast results. Provincial courts were given more power to approve death sentences quickly, without the lengthy review process that normally applied. Speed was treated as success. Convictions were treated as proof that the campaign was working. This was the environment Hugjiltu walked into when he reported a murder. He was an ethnic Mongolian teenager. He worked at the textile mill where the victim, a young woman with the surname Yang, also worked. When he found her body, he immediately told the police what he had seen. Within hours, the police had a new theory. It wasn't that Hugjiltu was a witness, it was that he was the killer. There was no physical evidence connecting him to the crime. No DNA, no fingerprints, no eyewitness who saw him commit the act. What there was a confession. That confession came after what has been described as a 48-hour interrogation. Hugjiltu was 18 years old. He was alone. He had no lawyer present because in China at that time, the right to legal counsel during interrogation barely existed in practice. After 2 days, he signed a confession to a crime he did not commit. On May the 23rd, 1996, the Hugjiltu City Intermediate Court convicted Hugjiltu of intentional murder and sentenced him to death. The Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region High Court reviewed the case on appeal. On June the 5th, they upheld the death sentence. 5 days later, on June the 10th, 1996, Hugjiltu was executed by firing squad. From the moment the body was found to the moment he was killed by the state, 62 days had passed. Read that again, 62 days. An investigation, a trial, an appeal, a review by a higher court, an execution. All completed in under 9 weeks for a capital murder case for an 18-year-old, based almost entirely on a confession extracted during 2 days of interrogation with no lawyer present. In any country with a functioning system of justice, that timeline alone should terrify you. In China's 1996 Strike Hard campaign, it was treated as a victory. Some of the police officers, prosecutors, and judges involved in convicting Hugjiltu were later promoted, specifically because of their work on this case. His death was used as proof that the system was working. His parents were left with nothing. No body to properly mourn in the way they wanted. No explanation that made sense. Just a son who had reported a crime and a government that killed him for it. For 9 years, that might have been the end of the story. A wrongful execution, buried under bureaucracy, never spoken of again. This happens more often than most governments will ever admit, but in October of 2005, something happened that no one expected. Police in Inner Mongolia arrested a serial rapist and murderer named Zhao Jihong. Zhao was a violent, prolific offender. Over the following confession, he admitted to more than 20 rapes and murders committed between 1996 and 2005. a span of 9 years during which he had continued to attack and kill women while Hugjiltu's case sat closed, his name carrying the word murderer that did not belong to him. Among the crimes Zhao confessed to was the rape and murder of the young woman named Yang in the public toilet at the textile mill in Huugjilt in April of 1996. He gave details. He described the scene in ways that matched the original crime. The case file later showed that he was able to provide accurate information about the location and the circumstances of the murder, details that did not match what Hugjiltu, under coercion, had actually said in his own confession years earlier. In other words, the real killer's story fit the crime scene. The forced confession from an innocent 18-year-old never had. You would think this discovery would have triggered an immediate, urgent correction. It did not. Zhao Jihong was scheduled to be tried in 2006 for a string of his crimes: the murder of the woman named Yang, the crime Hugjiltu had already been executed for, was left off the indictment. Authorities effectively avoided putting that specific charge in front of a court, because doing so would force an official acknowledgement that they had already executed the wrong person for it. Hugjiltu's mother, a woman named Shang Aiyun, learned of Zhao's confession in 2005. From that moment, she began a campaign that would last nearly a decade. She repeatedly petitioned the regional court to reopen her son's case. She was told again and again that the court was working on it. In 2006, the Political and Legal Committee of the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region quietly reviewed the case internally. By August of that year, that internal review had already concluded that Hugjiltu had been wrongfully convicted. This finding was not made public. It sat, unannounced, while his mother continued to ask a system that already knew the truth to admit it. Zhao Jihong's own trial, the one that should have settled the matter once and for all, was delayed, scheduled, then adjourned. Pushed back from 2006 all the way to 2014. 8 years of silence, while a mother who had lost her son to a wrongful execution waited for a government to find the courage to say 2 simple words: he's innocent. It would take a national media spotlight, growing public anger over China's justice system, and a wave of judicial reforms under a new political leadership before the case was finally reopened. In November of 2014, the High People's Court of Inner Mongolia formally reopened Hugjiltu's case. Over the following weeks, the court reviewed the original case file in full. What they found confirmed everything his mother had argued for 9 years. The original confession contained inconsistencies that should have raised doubt at the time. Hugjiltu had not accurately described physical details of the victim. He had gotten basic facts about the scene wrong, facts that the real killer, Zhao Jihong, had no trouble describing accurately because he had actually been there. On December the 15th, 2014, 18 years, 6 months, and 5 days after Hugjiltu was executed, the Inner Mongolia Higher People's Court issued its ruling. The original guilty verdict, the court said, was not consistent with the facts, and there was insufficient evidence. Hugjiltu was found not guilty. His parents were in the courtroom when it happened. 18 years of fighting for a verdict that could not give them back their son, but could finally give him back his name. If stories like this one matter to you, stories the system tried to bury, consider subscribing. The Chinese state news agency, Xinhua, would later call it one of the most notorious cases of judicial injustice in China in the recent decade. A senior court official personally apologized to Hugjiltu's family. They were eventually awarded state compensation. A deputy court president gave a sum of money directly to the family as part of the settlement, though no amount of money has ever been able to undo what was done. As for the real killer, Zhao Jihong was finally tried for his crimes in early 2015. On February the 9th, 2015, he was sentenced to death for 11 murders and 10 rapes committed across Inner Mongolia between 1996 and 2005. Zhao Zhihong was executed in July of 2019. A government that needed a quick conviction took the word of an 18-year-old, extracted across 48 hours with no lawyer present, and killed him in under 9 weeks. When the truth emerged 9 years later, that same government spent another 9 years deciding whether the truth was convenient enough to say out loud. Hugjiltu reported a murder. He told the police what he saw because that is what you are supposed to do. For that, he was executed. The woman who was actually attacked deserved justice. She got none for 9 more years, while the man who killed her walked free and killed others. Nobody in this story was protected by the system that exists in theory to protect everyone, not the victim, not Hugjiltu, not the women Zhao Zhihong went on to kill in the years his real crime sat buried. If there is a single image to carry away from this case, it is this one: a teenage boy walking into a public restroom to discover a tragedy, doing the right thing, and dying for it 62 days later. And a mother, standing in a courtroom 18 years after they took her son, finally hearing the words that should have come decades sooner. He's innocent. If this case disturbed you the way it disturbed me researching it, there are more stories like this one. Cases where the wrong person paid the ultimate price and the truth came far too late. I cover these cases every week because I believe the people behind these headlines deserve to be remembered as more than a footnote in someone else's crime. If you want to see those stories, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.